The morning rush at the Daily Nook is a carefully orchestrated chaos of clattering ceramic, the hiss of the espresso machine, and the low hum of a dozen conversations. Liam navigates it with the practiced ease of a small, determined girl with pigtails bouncing at his side. He spots their usual table, a slightly wobbly two-top by the window, perfect for his daughter Lily's crayon masterpieces and his own people watching. Today, however, a woman with a furrowed brow and eyes that scanned the room with an almost desperate intensity hovered near it, a worn leather-bound notebook clutched to her chest. She looked, Liam thought, like someone who had lost her keys and her composure in equal measure. Lily, ever direct, tugged his hand. "Daddy, can we sit?" "Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from in the comments, and if you believe love should feel like freedom, hit that like button and subscribe." The woman started, her gaze landing on them, a flush rising on her cheeks. Every other seat was taken. Liam offered a hesitant smile. "Morning. It's, usually pretty full on Tuesdays." He gestured to the empty chair at their small table. "You're welcome to join us, if you don't mind a bit of artistic expression." He nodded towards Lily, who was already pulling out a fistful of crayons. The woman looked from him to Lily, then to the chair, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes, relief, perhaps, or just sheer exhaustion. He had no idea who she really was, only that she looked like she needed a place to land. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice softer than he expected. I would appreciate that." And just like that, amidst the clatter of cups and Lily's crayon masterpiece of a purple sun, a stranger with an anxious smile and a notebook full of what looked like serious thoughts became the most interesting part of his very routine Tuesday. Liam settled into the familiar rhythm of fatherhood and caffeine. The Daily Nook was more than just a cafe to him and Lily. It was an extension of their small world, a comforting ritual after the school drop-off for Lily and before the solitude of his freelance illustration work consumed him. He worked from their quiet apartment, but sometimes the four walls felt a little too enclosing, and the gentle buzz of the Nook provided a welcome change of scenery, a backdrop of life that didn't demand anything from him. He was a man accustomed to quiet responsibility, his life revolving around Lily's schedule, her laughter, her occasional scraped knees. His own needs usually came second, or third, or somewhere further down the list. Lily, now 6, was his vibrant, chattering universe. She hummed as she drew, a bright pink crayon clutched in her small hand, occasionally glancing up at the woman who now shared their table. The stranger, who introduced herself simply as Clara, nursed a black coffee she'd fetched after settling in. She didn't say much, mostly observing the cafe with a keen, almost analytical gaze that Liam found intriguing. She'd jot notes in her leather-bound book, her brow furrowed in concentration. Then her expression would soften as she watched Lily draw. There was a quiet intensity about her that didn't quite fit the casual vibe of the Nook. He wondered what brought her here, what filled the pages of that serious notebook. The implied pressure Clara seemed to be under was almost palpable. Once, he heard a frazzled barista mutter to another. "Did the owner say when she was coming in to look at the new pastry supplier's samples? Because these croissants are not it." Clara, at their table, stiffened almost imperceptibly, her pen pausing over her notebook. She didn't look up, but a faint line appeared between her eyebrows. Liam filed the observation away. The Nook itself was a haven of mismatched charm, well-worn wooden tables, each with its own unique set of scratches and stories, shelves filled with donated books, the comforting scent of roasting coffee beans mingling with cinnamon from the morning's muffins. The light streamed in through the large front window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. For Liam, it was a place of quiet constants. For Clara, it seemed to be something more complex. He found himself hoping she'd be there again, this quiet woman with the observant eyes. He was beginning to enjoy this small disruption to his routine, this faint stirring of curiosity in a life that had become, by necessity, very predictable. The thought of her not returning brought an unexpected pang of disappointment, a realization that her presence, however brief, had already started to feel like a small, welcome addition to their Tuesday mornings. The next Tuesday, she was there again, looking a little less harried, and actually smiled when she saw him and Lily approach. "Is this table reserved for resident artists?" she asked, a hint of warmth in her voice. "Only the very best," Liam replied, grinning as Lily beamed. "Good morning, Clara." "Good morning, Liam." Lily. It became their unspoken arrangement. Clara would be there, often already with a coffee, and they would share the small table. Sometimes they talked easy, inconsequential things, the weather, Lily's latest school project, a funny headline in the paper. Other times, they sat in comfortable silence, Lily drawing, Liam sipping his latte, Clara writing in her notebook or simply watching the cafe's flow. One morning, Lily, in an attempt to show Clara her drawing of a three-legged dog, knocked her cup of juice, sending a wave of sticky orange across the table. "Oh, sweetie," Liam exclaimed, grabbing napkins. Clara was instantly on her feet. "Don't worry, I've got it." She was surprisingly efficient, dabbing at the spill, her movements quick and practical. "There's a cloth behind the counter, I think," she murmured, more to herself, then caught Liam's curious glance. "I mean, most cafes keep one handy," she amended quickly, a faint blush rising. "Let me grab some more napkins." When she returned, the minor crisis averted, Lily looked up at her with wide, apologetic eyes. "Sorry, Miss Clara." "It's perfectly all right," Clara said, her smile genuine. "It was a very energetic drawing." She then turned to Liam. "The baristas here are really good, aren't they? So calm under pressure." Liam nodded. "They are. It's one of the reasons we like it here. It always feels managed." Clara's smile was a little tight. "Good management is key," she agreed, a little too fervently. Liam found himself increasingly drawn to her quiet intelligence and the surprising flashes of humor that would peek through her reserved exterior. Clara, in turn, seemed to relax in their company, the lines of worry on her forehead smoothing out when Lily would tell her a rambling story. She kept her notebook close, but she opened it less frequently when they were there. She told him vaguely, a consultant, which explained the note-taking, but not the intensity of her focus on this particular cafe. She decided, with a small, internal sigh of relief each Tuesday, to just be Clara, the quiet woman at the corner table. The peace she found in those anonymous moments with Liam and his delightful daughter was a balm she hadn't realized she desperately needed. The thought of complicating it with the truth of her identity felt like too great a risk. For now, this shared table, this small island of calm, was enough. He once asked her, casually, if she came to the Daily Nook often. Her reply, more often than you'd think, was accompanied by a quick, almost shy smile that made his chest feel a little lighter. Their Tuesdays took on a comfortable rhythm. Clara would arrive a little before Liam and Lily, a coffee already waiting, her notebook open but often untouched until they left. She learned that Liam was illustrating a children's book about a brave little firefly, a project he worked on in stolen moments, his passion evident whenever he spoke of it. He learned that Clara had a surprisingly sharp wit and a soft spot for Lily's often nonsensical jokes. He'd notice her observing the staff, the way a barista handled a tricky customer, or the speed with which tables were cleared. She'd sometimes make a quiet comment, "That new blend of coffee they have is quite good, isn't it?" Or, "They seem a bit short-staffed today." Small things, but they added to the puzzle of who Clara really was. One day, Lily proudly presented Clara with a drawing. "It's you, Miss Clara, and that's your secret book." Clara's laugh was startled, then warm. "It's wonderful, Lily. Thank you. And yes, my very secret book." She caught Liam's eye over Lily's head, a shared amusement passing between them. He found himself anticipating Tuesdays with an eagerness that was entirely new. He liked Clara's company, the way she listened, the intelligence in her gaze. He liked the way her smile crinkled the corners of her eyes. The cafe itself seemed to respond to her presence, though no one else knew why. He once saw her subtly adjust a crooked picture frame on the wall when she thought no one was looking. Another time, she picked up a discarded sugar packet from the floor with a small frown. He teased her gently, "Are you secretly their quality control expert?" She'd just smile enigmatically. Someone has to make sure the sugar packets behave. But the closeness wasn't without its small retreats. There were days Clara seemed more distracted, her gaze distant, the notebook filled with more urgent scribbles. Once, after a particularly easy, laughter-filled morning, she gathered her things with an abruptness that surprised him. "I have to, a meeting," she'd said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I'll see you next week." She'd practically fled, leaving Liam with a sense of unease, a feeling that there was a whole world she inhabited that he knew nothing about. It made him cautious, reminding him that this comfortable little bubble they'd created was perhaps more fragile than he liked to admit. The pressure on Clara was indeed mounting. Her family, who owned a chain of boutique hotels, had reluctantly let her take over the Daily Nook, a passion project of her late grandmother's, with the caveat that she turn it into a profitable, brand-worthy entity. They envisioned something sleeker, more corporate. Clara, however, loved the Nook's quirky charm, its loyal, local clientele. Her secret visits were partly to understand its soul before proposing changes, partly to escape the endless strategy meetings and financial reports. She was trying to find a way to protect it, and in doing so, had stumbled upon a small, personal sanctuary. One Tuesday, her phone buzzed incessantly. She ignored it for as long as she could, trying to focus on Lily's story about a squirrel in her backyard. But the buzzing persisted, urgent and demanding. Finally, with an apologetic glance at Liam, she answered it, her voice low and tense. Yes. What do you mean it's offline? No, I told them to service it last week. Okay, I'm on my way. She hung up, her face pale. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice strained. There's a crisis at my office. I have to go. Right now. She gathered her notebook and bag, her movements jerky. Is everything okay? Liam asked, concerned by her obvious distress. It will be, she said, but she didn't sound convinced. I'll see you. And she was gone, leaving a half-empty coffee cup and a bewildered Liam and Lily. The warmth of the morning had vanished with her, replaced by a disquieting chill. He looked at the empty chair, a strange sense of loss settling over him. He was beginning to care about this enigmatic woman far more than he'd intended. The following Tuesday, Liam walked into the Daily Nook with a knot of apprehension in his stomach. He wasn't sure if Clara would be there after her hasty departure. The cafe was unusually chaotic. Baristas were rushing, customers were grumbling, and a long line snaked from the counter. In the midst of it all, near the usually gleaming espresso machine that now sat dark and silent, was Clara. She wasn't the quiet observer today. Her coat was thrown over a chair, her sleeves were pushed up, and she was speaking firmly but calmly to a flustered young man in an apron who looked on the verge of tears. Okay, Leo, Clara was saying, her voice carrying clearly over the din. Call Mr. Henderson. His number is in the emergency contact list in the office. Tell him the La Marzocco is completely dead, and we need him here ASAP. Offer him triple his usual emergency call-out fee if you have to. Maya, she turned to a wide-eyed barista, switch everyone to drip coffee and tea for now. Offer free pastries with every order for the inconvenience. And someone put up a sign. She moved with an authority and knowledge of the cafe's inner workings that stunned Liam into silence. This was not the quiet consultant who shared his table. This was someone in charge. Lily, oblivious, tugged his hand. Daddy, the coffee machine is sleepy. Clara's head snapped up at the sound of Lily's voice. Her eyes met Liam's, and for a moment, she froze. The color drained from her face, replaced by a wave of crimson that spread from her neck to her hairline. The bustling cafe seemed to fade into the background. It was just the two of them, separated by a few feet of chaos and a chasm of unspoken truths. Clara, Liam said, his voice barely a whisper. She took a deep breath, her shoulders slumping slightly. The fight seemed to go out of her. Liam, she said, her voice quiet but strained. Hi. It's not a great morning. The young barista, Leo, looked from Clara to Liam and back again, his jaw slack. Miss Clara? You know him. Clara closed her eyes for a brief second. Yes, Leo. I know him. She opened them and looked directly at Liam, a mixture of apology and resignation in her gaze. Liam, Lily, welcome to my cafe. The immediate crisis of the broken espresso machine eventually subsided. Mr. Henderson, the mechanic, arrived with miraculous speed, spurred, no doubt, by the promised fee, and began his metallic surgery. Clara, after delegating tasks and placating a few particularly irate customers, finally sagged against the counter, wiping a smudge of coffee from her cheek. Liam had found a quieter table in the back with Lily, who was happily drawing the broken coffee machine monster. He watched Clara, a whirlwind of emotions churning inside him. Confusion, a touch of hurt at the deception, but also a strange kind of admiration for the competent woman he'd just seen take command. When the immediate flurry died down, Clara approached their table, her expression wary. She pulled up a chair, her movements betraying her exhaustion. So she began, her voice low. I guess you have some questions. Liam looked at her, trying to reconcile the two Claras, the quiet, enigmatic woman who shared his table, and the decisive owner who ran this bustling cafe. You on the Daily Nook? He asked, the question sounding almost absurdly simple given the circumstances. She nodded, tracing the rim of an imaginary cup on the table. I do. My grandmother left it to me. I've been trying to get a feel for things, to understand it from a customer's perspective before my family insists I turn it into something it's not. Her voice was laced with a weariness that went beyond the morning's chaos. I wanted to see what made it special, what people loved about it. And then, I met you and Lily. She looked up at him, her eyes earnest. I didn't mean to deceive you, Liam. At first, it was just easier not to explain. And then, I enjoyed just being Clara, the woman with the notebook. Not Clara, the owner, with all the responsibilities and expectations. A small, self-deprecating smile touched her lips. It was selfish, I suppose. Our Tuesdays became important to me. A little escape. Liam was silent for a moment, processing her words. He thought of her quiet observations, her near slips, the way she seemed to carry a weight on her shoulders. It all made a painful kind of sense now. So all those notes were about a leaky faucet in the restroom, the inconsistency of the muffin recipe, whether Marco the barista was being underscheduled, she admitted. And sometimes, just sometimes, about how Lily's laugh could make even a bad financial projection seem less daunting. The cafe had emptied out considerably by the time Mr. Henderson finally declared the espresso machine revived, albeit with a stern warning about its age. Lily was dozing lightly, her head pillowed on her arms, a half-finished drawing of a smiling sun beside her. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the floor, the earlier chaos replaced by a weary calm. Clara walked Liam and a sleepy Lily to the door. The air between them was still thick with the day's revelations, but some of the tension had eased, replaced by a fragile understanding. I am sorry, Liam, Clara said softly, her gaze fixed on the scuffed toe of her shoe. For not being honest sooner. I was afraid. I was afraid if you knew, it would change things. That you wouldn't. She trailed off, then met his eyes, a flicker of vulnerability there. That our table wouldn't feel the same. Liam looked at her, truly looked at her, at the smudge of tiredness under her eyes, the way a stray strand of hair had escaped her hurried attempt to tie it back, the genuine remorse in her expression. He thought of the easy companionship they had found, the shared laughter, the quiet comfort of her presence. He thought of how much he'd come to look forward to their Tuesdays. A slow smile spread across his face. Well, he said, his voice gentle. I suppose this means I know who to complain to directly if the blueberry muffins are ever subpar. Clara blinked, then a small, shaky laugh escaped her. Consider it a direct line to the complaints department, she managed, a watery sheen in her eyes. And, Liam continued, his smile widening, I guess it also means if you ever need someone to test out experimental pastry recipes, Lily is a very willing, if not entirely discerning, volunteer. Lily, stirring at the mention of pastries, mumbled, muffins. Clara's laugh this time was more genuine, a wave of relief washing over her face. I'll keep that in mind. She reached out, almost hesitantly, and tucked the stray strand of hair behind her ear. So, same time next Tuesday? As, the owner and her favorite customers? Liam's heart felt suddenly lighter than it had in years. I think, he said, his gaze holding hers, we'd like that very much. Just Clara and Liam. And Lily, of course. She nodded, a soft smile playing on her lips. Just Clara. He leaned in slightly. For what it's worth, he said quietly, you're doing a great job with this place. Your grandmother would be proud. Tears welled in Clara's eyes then, real and unhidden. Thank you, Liam, she whispered. That means more than you know. Lily, now more awake, reached out and handed Clara a slightly crumpled drawing she'd been clutching. It was of 3 stick figures, a tall man, a small girl with pigtails, and a woman with a kind smile, all sitting around a table under a giant, friendly-looking coffee cup. For Miss Clara, Lily said, the Café Queen. Clara took the drawing, her hand trembling slightly. She looked from the drawing to Liam, then to Lily, her heart full. The Daily Nook wasn't just a business or a responsibility anymore. It was a place of connection, of unexpected friendships, and perhaps the beginning of something more. As Liam and Lily walked out into the fading afternoon light, Clara watched them go, the drawing held carefully in her hands, a hopeful, quiet smile gracing her lips. The coffee might still occasionally be too bitter, and the tables might still wobble, but for the first time in a long time, her little corner of the world felt perfectly, wonderfully whole. Thanks for watching. If you believe in second chances and real love, give this story a like and subscribe for more.